and welcome back to part 2 of North Carolina Serial Killers. I'm Lisa, your host, and my handsome co host and husband, Timothy.
Well, aren't you so sweet? Well, thank you, dear, for that wonderful introduction.
And thank you for my beautiful flowers.
Oh, absolutely. Anything from my queen.
Uh-huh. Well, it's been a minute, but we promised you'd get this back, and here we are. I'm having technical difficulties over here. Can't keep anything up on my desk.
Part 2 of Serial Killers of North Carolina. We
And
got quite a response on part 1. Thank you, everyone, for listening and subscribing.
thank
Uh,
you very, very much.
we even were able to have a text message conversation, so to speak, with Velma Barfield's daughter.
We think that's her.
We think it's her. So without further ado, you ready to get started?
Let's do it. First up is the Edgecombe serial killer, and my sweet man, you can start it off.
All right. So, just as a little background, the Edgecombe County serial killer killings were a span of crimes that happened between 2005 and 2009. The number of victims is supposedly between 10 and 11. Supposedly, the serial killer has never been apprehended, but as we go over this, you're kind of going to think maybe he was. He also is known as the Seven Bridges Killer. And as far as we know, all of his victims were African American. They did engage in prostitution and did have problems with drug addiction. Now, having said that, these are people too. They just fell on some hard times. These families need answers. So as we go through this, and Lisa, I think you'll back me up on it. If you know anything,
Please call the proper authorities. Let somebody know.
but this serial killer was active around Edgecombe and Halifax counties in North Carolina. And it looks like, from what we can tell, that would have been, well, just to back up a little bit, around Rocky Mount and the Seven Bridges area. That's why it was called the Seven Bridges Killer as well. But it looks like the first victim of the killer was a Rocky Mount woman, a 29-year-old Melanie Wiggins. And she was reported missing on May 30th, 2005. Her partially stripped body being found on June 2nd in rural Edgecombe County. Following a forensic autopsy, it was established the woman had received several knife wounds and blows from a blunt object to the head, which proved to be her undoing.
And then the second one was on January 16th, 2007. Relatives of 43-year-old Christine Mary Boone contacted the police to report her as missing. The initial search proved unsuccessful until her skeletized remains were found on March 9th, 2010.
Wow.
Yes, that's sad. So if you know something, say something, please.
So we've got a little bit of a gap there as we move from 2005 to 2007. However, on May 8th, 2007, Jackie Thorpe was reported missing. And unfortunately, her corpse was found in a state of severe decomposition, and that was found on August the 7th. So just a few months after, August 17th, I'm sorry.
No, you must have jumped ahead of me.
No, you did Christine Mary Boone, and I'm on the next one.
May 8th.
Mm-hmm. May 8th, 2007.
Oh, okay.
Or 2007, I should say. Yeah.
Okay.
You got it?
I got you now. I was looking. I was like, I didn't see August. My glasses, yeah. I need to clean them. Yes, I need to clean them. Honey, would you come clean my glasses, please?
Yes, absolutely. I will pause the podcast.
No, don't do that. Let's don't keep them waiting.
Okay. So she was found Jackie Thorpe was found. She was reported missing May 8th, 2007, and was found August 17th of the same year, 2007. She was found near the Seven Bridges Road, and she was the first victim whose remains were found at this location, but she surely wouldn't have been the last.
And then on the afternoon of June 17th, 46-year-old Joyce Renee Durham was seen for the last time in Rocky Mount. As of December 2023, she has not been located. Wow. 2007 was a busy year for him.
Yeah, it sure looks that way.
If you know something, please.
Yeah. So
do
the right thing. Absolutely. Do the right thing. So in February 2008, 50-year-old Ernestine Battle went missing, and her skeletonized remains were found March 14th by a farmer, once again, near the Seven Bridges Road. I can't even listen to the Eagles song anymore.
No, not that one.
Since the body was in a state of severe decomposition, the medical examiner, he was really unable to establish a cause of death.
That is bad.
Yeah, I mean,
You would think,
Rocky Mount is it's not a it's not like a Winston Salem. I mean, it's a city,
but it's a small city, but it's a city. It's bigger, I think. Isn't it bigger than Kinston?
Yeah, it's bigger than Kinston. I would put it on line certain parts of it with Goldsboro or something like that.
Gotcha.
So,
and then a year later, on February 5th, 2009, 36-year-old Yolanda Renee Lancaster was also reported missing. And in January 2011, her remains were found in a wooded area off the Seven Bridges Road by a group of hunters.
So it looks like he likes to, his dump site, he likes to make it right around this Seven Bridges area.
Yes, I think he does. He's familiar, Too bad they couldn't have put cameras up to see who was there.
Yeah. Now, the next one, it's sad, but she's very interesting, because she was indeed murdered by a serial killer, but that her brother was also a serial killer. Not the serial killer responsible for these murders, but nonetheless a serial killer. So a week after,
and this one is a very good one.
Yeah. So about a week later, after Miss Yolanda Lancaster was discovered, about a week later, the body of 33-year-old Elizabeth Jane Smallwood was found on a soccer field in Rocky Mount.
So you do know that she was placed there. She was placed there. They wanted somebody to find her.
I believe that. They wanted her to be found. It was established she didn't maintain contact with her relatives, due to which her exact date of disappearance is unclear. But based on the state of her body, it was determined she'd been killed approximately 6 months before the body was found. So she was somewhere placed on ice and then posed
in a freezer somewhere. They meant for somebody to find. Maybe they knew that her brother was a serial killer.
I don't know.
And they did that. I don't know, but that is really, really odd.
Crazy. It's just, when you look into the psychology of this, we know that Elizabeth Jane Smallwood had moved from Kentucky to North Carolina. She'd been here for several years, but her brother was serial killer Robert Smallwood, and he's a convicted serial killer who strangled at least 3 women to death in Kentucky. And up until around 2006, the 3 women that they know that he killed, the thought was they were unrelated, but they were later linked together through DNA testing, and he was arrested the following month. And so that's Elizabeth Jane Smallwood, Not only was she a victim of a serial killer, but her brother was also a serial killer.
That is just bless her heart.
That's just horrible, isn't it?
It is horrible. And for somebody to kill her, put her on ice, and then place her where they placed her, they meant for her to be found.
They did, and that all the sickness that's involved in that. You
That
know,
is very sick.
what an
Very.
asshole! What an asshole!
I
And
hope they get what's
there's
coming
no
to them.
there's no telling what these women have lived through up until they met their demise. I mean, some of them. It appears they were homeless. They were living on the streets, um, doing drugs to kind of cope with everything, selling their bodies for drugs. And then this is the demise that you meet. And then one of you, had she remained in Kentucky, would her, I mean, she could have been a victim of her own brother. I don't know that. I'm speculating.
Yeah, I know. I would hope not. I would hope not.
Yeah. So,
And then,
but
so, but if you know something, please, they're all cruel. These women deserve to be able to rest.
yeah, that's just tough right there. I
And
mean,
then,
and then we move to what, February 22nd of the same year?
yep, 28-year-old Tahara Shanice Nicholson was reported missing, with her body later found on March 7th near the Seven Bridges Road.
Once again.
Yep. After an autopsy, it was concluded that she had been strangled to death.
Wow. And as we move forward just a few months of the same year, April 25th, relatives of 31-year-old Jamaica Latoya Hardgrove contacted the police to report her disappearance. And they actually did an initial search for her, but they couldn't find her. And her remains were discovered June 29th in a wooded area. Guess where they were a few feet away from? Seven Bridges Road.
Oh, let me guess.
So
Oh, my
here's
goodness.
here's a question I have.
Mm-mm-mm.
Okay, she's reported missing April 25th. They contacted the police. Initial search, they didn't find anything, but her remains were discovered almost 2 full months later. Well, a little more than 2 months later, in a wooded area. Her remains doesn't say skeletized remains. So was she kept on ice as well, just as we know? And I say on ice, I mean, there had to be some kind of method to preserve. I mean, because we do know that Elizabeth Jane Smallwood um, was found on a ball field. And, that we do know that several months had passed, at least 6 months. And that's what it looks like here with Jamaica Hardgrove.
And we're talking okay, we're in the South. We live not far from here. We're talking June, from April to June. It's hot.
It's very hot.
So she would have had to been really good and decomposed. I mean, she'd been stinking.
And it
Let's be
doesn't.
honest. And it doesn't say that.
No, because everything else that we read and researched skeletized remains, but in these two cases here, remains.
So they must
So
have had a reason for keeping them too.
yeah,
Or they
some
could have
kind of.
kept them alive.
Well, who knows? Who knows? I mean, time of death for Mrs. Smallwood, they estimate that she was killed at least 6 months prior to, so she was placed
Yeah.
on ice somehow or another.
Yeah, she was.
So as we move into 2010, you
A
want to go over?
man riding an ATV found the body of 40-year-old Roberta Williams by the side of the Seven Bridges Road. While investigating her killing, her relatives claimed that they had filed a statement to the authorities about Roberta's vanishing, which was subsequently denied by law enforcement.
It's kind of a tongue full right there, isn't it?
As it is, but it doesn't make sense.
Subsequently, I can't say it.
Subsequently, something, which was later denied by law enforcement.
And you know, and this is me speculating, and I do this nearly every podcast. You know, were you giving this family their due diligence, or were you blowing this off
Because of what they did?
Yeah, because she was a prostitute, drug addict. Were you giving it their due diligence? Did something actually fall between the cracks? Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. I'm speculating.
Yeah.
We do know as we move forward in examining the murders, sperm traces were found on
Nicholson's body.
Yeah, which, according to investigators, led to her killer. And after a DNA examination, the biological traces were linked to one Antoine Pittman.
Now, he was born July 15th, 1978, in Rocky Mount, where he was raised by his single mother. His school years, he began to engage in criminal activities, and in 94, he was arrested on charges of attempting to rape a 2-year-old child.
Asshole.
He is an asshole. He had a plea deal. He pled guilty to indecent behavior, and in that July was released on probation.
What kind of? He must have had a really good lawyer. We got you for indecent behavior and not the full-on act.
I know. Well, it could have been because he was 94. How? 78, 80. Well, no, he'd have been just about, yeah. He had to have a good lawyer. During the probationary period, he was obligated to spend 90 days in Rehabilitation Institute for juvenile offenders, but was quickly expelled after a month following a fight, after which he was placed under house arrest.
So in January of 96, he committed several offenses, and Antoine Pittman was arrested for violating his parole. And after that, he was again sent to a juvenile correction center where he remained until 1997. And in subsequent years, told you I can't pronounce that word.
In later years.
He was charged with theft, assault, resisting arrest, and giving alcohol to minors. And wonder why he was giving alcohol to minors.
We know. We both know. We all know.
Yeah. So you want to pick it up from there? Or you want me to continue?
Oh, I'll do. In 2003, Mr. Scumbag Antoine served 45 days in a county jail for hiding the fact that he was a registered sex offender in the state while applying for a job. And during this time, a blood sample was taken from him. In 2004, he was convicted of drunk driving, for which he spent another few weeks in jail. Then he was in 2007, he was arrested for assaulting a prostitute.
Here we go.
Yes, this is it. In the same area where the other victims had been killed.
Bless her heart. She could have been a victim.
She could have been.
Yep. Guys, if you're following with us this far, we truly believe Antoine Pittman is the serial killer here.
We really do.
He's only been charged with one crime, but you'll see as this plays out.
Yeah, go ahead and take it up from there.
All right. So he was convicted of drunk driving. He spent another few weeks in jail. And then in 2007, like you said, he was arrested for assaulting a prostitute in the same area where the other victims had been killed. So in the spring of 2009, Antoine Pittman was arrested again for driving under the influence, but was released after his bail was paid. After failing to appear in court for his trial, he was listed as a fugitive and therefore arrested in Nash County. And guys, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
Welcome back, everybody.
All right, guys. Thanks for being patient with us. Um, and like we said, that he Pittman was arrested for drunk driving under the influence. He was released after his bail was paid. And then imagine this. Can you imagine this? He
No,
failed to appear in court for his trial.
of course he did.
Listed as a fugitive and therefore arrested in Nash County in August, he was lodged in the county jail yet
Yet
again,
again.
where he would soon be charged with the Nicholson murder. But due to circumstantial evidence, investigators began to suspect that Antoine Pittman may be responsible for the other killings.
It turned out that he often visited the area near the Seven Bridges Road. Since, as a teenager, he had lived for several years at his grandparents' home in Whitakers, which was located only a few miles away from where Nicholson, Williams, Thorpe, Battle, and Hargrove's bodies were later found. Imagine that.
And that's something. Boy, it's starting to look like
We found us a serial killer.
yeah, if it sounds like a duck
If it quacks like a duck,
and talks like a duck,
it walks like a duck.
it's a damn duck.
Duck, diddy duck, duck, quack, quack.
And imagine this. Okay, not only did he live near that Seven Bridges area, but in 2005, he briefly lived in a house located near the soccer field where Mrs. Smallwood's body was found.
Huh. Makes you wonder.
I know we're going to go through this in our notes and everything, but wonder why they haven't got him to confess to all these murders.
I don't know.
It's crazy.
I don't know. You can't make somebody, well, you can't really make them say it, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, we do know this too, that in 2006, Antoine Pittman lived for several weeks in a trailer in Scotland Neck, where in March 2010, Christine Boone's corpse would be found in a wooded area not far from the trailer.
And in addition, go ahead. You go.
Antoine was detained by traffic police. Where at?
Seven Bridges Road.
On the same day that another victim, Mrs. Hargrove, mysteriously disappeared. She could have been in the trunk.
She could have been. He
Crazy
was found
stuff.
unconscious in his car with his pants lowered. Wow.
Perv.
After which he was awakened and interrogated and later charged with drunk driving. 2 months later.
This when he needed to meet Miss Taylor Blanche Moore to eat that chicken sandwich.
Yeah, she'd have fed him good. Yeah. And then 2 months later, Hargrove's body was found in a field 180 yards away.
That's, again, walks like a duck, talks like a duck.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So at his trial, Mr. Pittman was forced to admit that he actually knew one of the victims, Tahira Hargrove. He had to admit that he knew her.
Mm-hmm.
And according to him, 6 days before her body was discovered, he put her in his car and paid for her services. After they had engaged in relations, yeah, got to be careful with that algorithm. He dropped her off near the library in downtown Rocky Mount
and never saw her again. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So September 2011, Antoine Pittman was found guilty. And I'm sorry I said Tahira Hargrove, but it's Tahira Nicholson. He was found guilty of her murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Skating.
And despite the fact that he was never charged with the other murders, the media and police have identified him as responsible for them since, according to the official version provided by law enforcement, the killings ceased after his arrest.
Imagine that. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2012, and as I go over this part, we'll segue into another serial killer. 2012, July 2012, a charity motorcycle ride was held for the 5 women found murdered. The ride was organized to help raise awareness for the 9 women found who are suspected to be victims of the Edgecombe County killer.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, if you know anything at all, if you have any information about this, please do your duty and go to the authorities. It's just a phone call. It's just a phone call.
That's all you need to do.
I mean, in all honesty, I think everybody knows who committed these murders, but they could only pin him on one. And I think maybe the families probably breathe a little easier because in their minds, they're convinced that this sack of shit is indeed the murder. But wouldn't it be nice to say officially in a court of law, you've been charged with killing my daughter or my sister or my mother or my aunt or my grandmother? So again, guys, if you know anything about this, please reach out to the local authorities.
Yeah, please do. It can mean the difference.
Absolutely. And so, Mrs. Eubanks, that leaves 2 more. I believe we have Philip Engel and Terry Hyatt.
Well,
So
let's go right into Terry Hyatt since he's the very next one.
All right.
And he was born March 28th, 1957. And he is an American serial killer who killed at least 3 women in North Carolina from 1979 to 1987. He was convicted and sentenced to death for 2 of them. He was linked to the third via DNA profiling in 2005, pleading guilty and receiving a life term. He is currently housed at Central Prison in Raleigh, awaiting execution.
Been on death row a long time. He's still alive.
He is still alive. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Let's see. He was born in Asheville, North Carolina, the second of 5 children. Well, he was raised in what they described as a normal family. Hyatt, he nevertheless struggled with school due to an apparent learning disability and his inability to connect with others on an emotional level. Despite his unusual behavior, he was regarded as friendly and helpful by family and neighbors.
Said he liked to fix old cars.
Yeah, and later resold them.
But it says from the research, it says at the same time, he's a small time criminal. He frequently stole stuff. I think November 9th, 1975, he was given a 4-year prison sentence, and because he'd been convicted of larceny, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He stole a woman's purse.
Yeah, and that meant he broke the conditions of earlier parole from his previous conviction.
In May of '76, he escaped, but was recaptured only a day later.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, Harriet Simmons, a 40-year-old, on April 15th, 1979, she was a mother of 7 and a night manager at a restaurant in Raleigh called Johnny's Supper Club. And she left that night in a blue 1978 Toyota to visit her boyfriend in Nashville, Tennessee. But she never arrived. However, prompting her son-in-law, Ronald DeMint, he went to go look for her. He followed the exact same route she traveled, and he found her car at an I-40 rest stop near Statesville. Lisa, most of her belongings were in that car, except for her car keys and purse. Everything else was still in the car.
Wow.
And you know, her son-in-law, he got worried over this.
Well, he was a
Um,
good son-in-law.
he was a good son-in-law. She had promised to contact her children if anything happened. Local police were called. They tried to locate her. And despite the involvement of both local authorities and the SBI, no trace of her was ever found for more than a year.
Wow. Then on March the 23rd, 1980, a man walking through the I cannot is this I can't
Pisgah.
Pisgah National Park found what appeared to be the skeletal remains of a body in a wooded section not far from Chandler.
That's the national forest with the waterfall.
Oh my gosh. Oh, preliminary examinations determined that the bones were those of a female, but because of deterioration, they were unable to establish her age, race, or cause of death. The remains were then sent to the office of medical examiner, Dr. Larry Tate in Chapel Hill. Yoo-hoo! Go Tar Heels!
Yeah.
Who deduced that the victim had been killed by 4 stabs to the left side of her chest. And judging by the jewelry and car keys found near the body, it was suggested by this time the remains might indeed be those of Harriet Simmons.
Wow.
Yeah.
So later that same day, it looks like the state medical examiner, Dr. Paige Hudson, released a statement to the press claiming that the descendant had been tentatively identified as Harriet Simmons.
Wow.
So, with the recovery of her body, authorities began reinvestigating her case. And they considered a possible link to the Old Time Fiddlers Convention in Union Grove Township, which was attracting visitors from all over the country. Since she disappeared on the final day of the convention, they were trying to make a connection there with somebody there responsible for that.
Yeah.
But in 1984, after a break came, the case, drifter Henry Lee Lucas falsely admitted to Simmons' murder, as well as 9 other murders committed in the in North Carolina and South Carolina. But like most of his claims, they were false, because Harry Lee Lucas is another known serial killer.
Yeah.
And he also has a history of confessing to murders that he had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
And that's what they think happened here, that he really had nothing to do with them at all. But who knows? Another sack of shit. So.
Yeah, he's another sack of shit.
So from there, tell us about Betty Sue McConnell.
On August the 25th, 1979, 21-year-old Betty Sue McConnell, she was a young mother of 1 child and a Dunkin' Donuts employee working in Asheville. She disappeared en route to meet a friend at a bowling alley. After failing to return home on time, her mother and older sister, they contacted the police, who immediately started searching for her. 3 hours later, the mortally wounded McConnell was found off a bank of the French Broad River near Alexander. She had been stabbed several times in the chest. An ambulance was called to save her life. She died from the wounds en route to the hospital. Two hours later, her partially submerged automobile was found 5 miles away from where McConnell had been found.
Bless her heart. She fought for everything she had.
She did, bless her heart.
So,
you want to start the next one?
Yeah, so it looks like around October 19th. Um, wow, that's Dave's birthday.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
David is a childhood friend of ours, guys. October 19th, 1979, um, Hyatt was driving around Asheville. He spotted 40-year-old Carolyn Brigman. She was walking from home from her job from Krispy Kreme. So
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts and now Krispy Kreme.
He had a thing for those, I guess.
And last episode we had a Taco Bell guy.
Yeah. So,
And
yep.
Miss Blanche Taylor Moore chicken
Was
sandwiches.
yes.
I'm gonna quit eating places.
You see, I told you we need to stop eating out altogether.
Well, I think so, especially donuts.
And chicken.
Wow. And guys, we're just trying to bring some levity to the seriousness of the situation. We're not making fun of anybody.
No, because gosh knows, I feel for every single one of these people. I mean, everybody, all these serial killers need the same fate that they inflicted on every person they killed.
Yeah. Makes
They
you
need a
wonder though
slow death.
if he was going to Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme, um, he needed that sugar for serotonin fix or something, I guess. But anyway, Hyatt pulled his truck beside her and, under threat of a knife, told her to get inside. And he just drove around aimlessly. He took $44 from her, constantly threatening to cut her throat up. And he eventually released her after she convinced him that she didn't like the police and was not going to contact them. However, immediately after, um, Carolyn Brigman did go to the police,
Hmm. Good
and
for her.
good for her. And she described her abductor and his truck, and that allowed them to track him down and arrest him. A few months later, he was found guilty and sentenced to a 25-year prison term for armed robbery and kidnapping. Oh, bless her heart. You know, she got lucky.
God had her.
She got lucky.
She got very lucky. And I
Somewhere
don't.
somewhere in there she was able to talk him down and her way out of that truck.
Mm,
Crazy
I,
stuff.
I know. She was very lucky.
Yeah. So
And
from
then
there, who was next?
There's Miss Jerry Jones.
Okay.
On July 9th, 1987, 19-year-old Jerry Ann Jones, a cashier working at a Harris Teeter store in Doretta, was reported missing after her boyfriend went to see her at the store. A day later, authorities found her body in a wooded section of Doretta. She was naked and her throat had been slit.
Wow.
Police Captain Larry Snyder said an unknown assailant might have kidnapped her from a parking lot on Graham Street. In response to her murder, Harris Teeter Stores offered a $10,000 prize for any information provided to authorities relating to her murder, followed by Crime Stoppers with a $1,000 prize. Not prize. They put prize. It's a reward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my fault.
No,
Um,
it's not your fault. It's up here.
I know, but those are my notes, so we're good. It's all right.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Uh-huh. Well,
Wait. Yes, it's not a prize.
so here she is, a Harris Teeter cashier.
Mm-hmm.
But it is nice that Harris Teeter and Crime Stoppers both were willing to put up reward money.
Yeah, that's very true.
So it looks like a few days later, police in Charlotte announced that Jerry Jones's murder might be connected to the recent SA of a 24-year-old woman. In both cases, witnesses reported seeing a white male driving a white pickup truck approach the women And in the Charlotte case, the woman said that her assailant drove her to an isolated area um, off of Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, where she was S8. Following that announcement, the police were overwhelmed with various tips about the cases. However, despite their efforts, her murder became a cold case and went unconnected to the previous two cases for several more years. And it was a cold case squad that was assembled for the Charlotte Police Department. Um, when they started reopening cases and interviewing regarding these unsolved cases in 1984, they expressed that maybe DNA could help. And it looks like it did.
I think so, because on November 19th, 1998, he was arrested for the murders of Simmons and McConnell and was held in the Buncombe County Jail without bond. The arrest came as a shock to both family and parents alike, all of who claimed he was not capable of doing such vicious acts.
Wow. And his arrest came about because of an alcoholic friend, Jerry Harmon, who stumbled into the sheriff's office drunk, claiming that he was whacked with a gun for doing something terrible. And he then told them he had accompanied Hyatt in ramming Betty McConnell's car off the road the night of her death. Because remember, her car was found 5 miles further up the road submerged, remember?
Yeah.
And it was an apparent attempt to steal money for drugs and drinks. But Hyatt then dragged her off into the woods, and when he returned, he was bloodied. And he had told Harmon that he killed her. So
Go ahead.
later on, another friend of Hyatt's, Lester Dean Helms, admitted to participating in Simmons' murder. In his account, the two came across her on the rest stop where a car had broken down, offered her a ride to get her car parts, but instead drove her to the mountains, where each took turns essaying her before Hyatt dragged her off into the woods and came back without her, covered in blood. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So Hyatt's got a bunch of friends that are all sacks of shit too.
Yeah, you see, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Hyatt attempted to prevent his friend's confession from being admitted into evidence in court, but the good Justice James U. Downs overruled it. He reasoned that after his arrest, the defendant had voluntarily waived his rights and didn't request an attorney.
Mm. And at the trial, his attorneys pointed out that no reliable physical evidence existed against their client, and the prosecution's key witnesses, Harmon and Helms, were less than reliable.
So we got a sack of shit attorney too.
Yeah, all of them are. While these claims were partially acknowledged by the prosecutors, they also pointed out that Harmon had no reasonable motive to confess, as he would also be implicating himself in a possible death penalty case.
Yeah.
And then on February 1st, 2000, he was found guilty and convicted of both murders. The verdict was later celebrated by the victims' families. Good for them.
Yeah.
And then 4 days later, he was handed 2 death sentences for the murder charges and 6 consecutive life sentences for the rape, kidnapping, and robbery charges.
And you know, early on, we went into his background a little bit, and we know that Terry Hyatt, you know, he struggled to make friends. He struggled in school. But does this really warrant this kind of behavior?
No.
And he obviously was able to make friends, you know?
If it not the good kind.
No. Well, sack of shit is a sack of shit does.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-mm-mm. Wow.
Exactly.
So on January 15th, 2005, with Hyatt's DNA, which had been entered into CODIS, he was linked to the Jones murder. The match was made via a cigarette butt found next to Mrs. Jones' body, as
Good.
well as Hyatt's semen
Fluids.
fluids, which were found in her.
Oh my, bless her heart.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
After making a plea deal with the prosecutors who agreed not to seek the death penalty, Hyatt pleaded guilty to the murder and was given another life term to run consecutively with his other sentences.
Well, it doesn't matter. He's still got two death sentences. So
it's amazing to me, you're all kinds of Mr. Man when it comes to taking somebody else's life, but you got to avoid the death penalty.
Oh yeah, because he's a crybaby then.
Yeah.
I can go do it to somebody else, but don't do it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't.
So this was, renewed coverage of this took place because of an episode of Cold Case Files. They covered Hyatt's original convictions, and it was suggested that he might be responsible for even more murders. So far, he hasn't been linked to any other violent crimes. But again, if a duck, like we said. So.
Yeah, it sure does. And if you want to, you can start the next one.
Well, I'm going to throw this out at you. I'm looking at our time, what we're coming up on.
See this. I hadn't noticed our time. Yeah. I'm having so much fun.
Yay. So I do believe that there will more than likely be
a part 3.
Part 3.
Ooh.
What do you think?
If you want a part 3, let us know in the comments.
There you go, guys. Well, until next time, thank you, everybody.
Have a great day. And have a Buckles Berry Lemonade kind of day.
Thanks, guys.